Most people think an EMP attack would instantly send humanity back to the Stone Age. Cars would stop, planes would fall from the sky, every electronic device would die in a fraction of a second, and civilization would collapse before lunch. It's a terrifying image. Hollywood loves it. Survival forums repeat it endlessly. And like many popular disaster stories, it's built on a mixture of truth, misunderstanding, and a healthy dose of panic. The dangerous part isn't that people fear EMPs. The dangerous part is that most people fear the wrong things. If an electromagnetic pulse struck tomorrow, millions of people would waste precious time preparing for disasters that probably wouldn't happen, while completely ignoring the threats that actually could kill them. Here's what nobody tells you. An EMP is not magic. It doesn't possess some supernatural ability to vaporize every piece of technology on Earth. It's a physical phenomenon governed by the same laws of physics that control every electrical device around you right now.
An electromagnetic pulse is essentially a burst of electromagnetic energy. The most commonly discussed scenario involves a nuclear weapon detonated high above the atmosphere. The explosion interacts with Earth's magnetic field and creates an enormous pulse capable of inducing electrical currents in conductors over a very large area. That sounds terrifying, because it is. But notice something important. The pulse doesn't target electronics. It targets conductors. The longer the conductor, the more energy it can collect. That's why massive electrical grids, long transmission lines, communication infrastructure, and interconnected systems are considered vulnerable. A tiny battery-powered flashlight sitting in a drawer isn't exactly presenting a giant target to the laws of electromagnetism. One of the biggest myths surrounding EMP attacks is that every vehicle instantly becomes a useless metal sculpture. Reality is far more complicated. Numerous tests over the years have suggested that many modern vehicles would likely continue functioning after various EMP exposures. Some might experience temporary disruptions, some could suffer damage, others might never notice anything happened.
Physics doesn't care about internet rumors. A vehicle contains wiring, but compared to national power grids stretching hundreds of miles, those conductors are relatively short. That doesn't make cars immune. It simply means the situation isn't nearly as dramatic as popular culture suggests. Imagine millions of people abandoning perfectly functional vehicles because they assume they are dead. That kind of misunderstanding could create chaos more effectively than the pulse itself. The first survival lesson is surprisingly simple. Verify before you panic. In any infrastructure disaster, assumptions become deadly. If your equipment appears functional, test it. If communications are available, use them. If transportation still works, preserve it carefully. People who react based on evidence almost always outperform people who react based on fear. The second myth is even more dangerous. Many people imagine the EMP itself as the primary killer. In reality, the pulse is usually only the beginning of the problem.
The real threat is what happens afterward. Modern civilization operates like an enormous machine built from countless interconnected systems. Water treatment depends on electricity. Fuel distribution depends on electricity. Food transportation depends on electricity. Financial systems depend on electricity. Healthcare depends on electricity. Remove enough pieces of that machine and the consequences begin to ripple outward. Think of it like removing the heart from a living organism. The damage doesn't occur only at the heart. Every organ begins to suffer. Within days, refrigeration becomes a concern. Within weeks, supply chains begin to fracture. Critical infrastructure struggles to recover. Communities become increasingly dependent on local resources rather than distant networks. This is where survival planning becomes practical rather than cinematic. Most people stockpile gadgets. Smart survivors stockpile capabilities.
A garage full of expensive equipment means very little if you don't understand water purification, food preservation, basic medical care, communication, and resource management. Water remains the king of survival priorities. Humans can survive surprisingly long without many modern comforts. Water is not one of them. A widespread power failure could interrupt pumping stations, treatment facilities, and distribution systems. Even if water still flows from a faucet initially, contamination risks increase as infrastructure degrades. Understanding filtration, boiling, chemical treatment, and safe storage becomes more valuable than owning the latest tactical accessory. This works because pathogens are biological organisms with known vulnerabilities. Heat destroys many of them. Proper filtration physically removes many contaminants. Chemical disinfectants disrupt cellular processes that microorganisms require for survival. Survival often looks less like an action movie and more like understanding basic biology. Food creates another common misunderstanding.
People often imagine immediate starvation. Reality tends to unfold differently. Most developed nations contain enormous amounts of food. The challenge isn't existence. The challenge is distribution. Supermarkets typically carry only limited inventory relative to population demand. Once panic buying begins, shelves empty rapidly. The danger isn't that food disappears. The danger is that access becomes unpredictable. This is why resilient households focus on stored calories with long shelf lives, diverse nutrition sources, and preparation methods that don't rely entirely on the electrical grid. Knowledge matters here too. A pantry can disappear surprisingly quickly if consumption isn't managed carefully. Human psychology changes during uncertainty. People often eat more when stressed. They make poor rationing decisions. They underestimate duration. A 6-month supply becomes a 2-month supply faster than many people realize. Another dangerous myth involves communication.
Many assume all communication instantly vanishes forever. Reality, again, depends on circumstances. Some systems may fail. Some may survive. Some may be restored rapidly. Others could remain compromised for extended periods. The practical lesson isn't to predict exactly which systems survive. The practical lesson is redundancy. Whenever a single system becomes your only solution, you create vulnerability. Communication, power generation, lighting, cooking, navigation, and information gathering all benefit from layered backups. Redundancy works because complex failures rarely eliminate every pathway simultaneously. Nature teaches this principle constantly. Ecosystems survive disruption through diversity. Human survival follows the same pattern. Now let's talk about perhaps the most overlooked threat of all: human behavior. History repeatedly demonstrates that fear spreads faster than facts. When people face uncertainty, rumors become currency.
A single false story can trigger massive behavioral changes. Empty shelves, fuel shortages, traffic congestion, public disorder. In many disaster scenarios, secondary effects generated by human reactions become more disruptive than the initiating event. This is why emotional discipline becomes a survival tool. The ability to remain calm isn't merely psychological comfort, it's an operational advantage. A calm mind processes information more accurately. It conserves energy. It avoids unnecessary risks. It identifies opportunities that panic blinds people to. The physics of an EMP may damage infrastructure. The psychology of panic can damage entire communities. One final myth deserves attention. Many people prepare for a single catastrophic moment, one event, one attack, one instant when everything changes. Real disasters rarely behave so neatly. Recovery is often uneven. Some regions recover faster than others. Some systems return before others. Unexpected adaptations emerge. Communities improvise solutions. New networks form. Old assumptions disappear.
Human beings are remarkably resilient creatures. We've survived ice ages, pandemics, wars, famines, volcanic eruptions, economic collapses, and countless disasters throughout history. The technologies may change, but the underlying survival principles remain surprisingly consistent. Adaptability beats prediction. Knowledge beats gear. Preparation beats panic. And understanding reality beats believing myths. So if an EMP attack ever becomes more than a hypothetical headline, remember this: the pulse itself is only part of the story. The larger challenge is navigating the chain reaction that follows. Those who understand systems, manage resources, maintain flexibility, and stay grounded in evidence will have a significant advantage over those who prepared only for dramatic movie scenes. The most dangerous myth about EMP attacks isn't that they are harmless. They aren't. A sufficiently large EMP could create enormous disruption across modern infrastructure. The dangerous myth is believing that every electronic device will instantly die, civilization will vanish overnight, and survival will depend on luck alone. Because when people believe that myth, they stop thinking. And in any crisis, the moment you stop thinking is the moment the real danger begins.